the breathing flowing naturally and effortlessly. And setting the mind into the present moment. And simply becoming aware of the rhythm of the breath. And with the eyes at least partially open, resting your gaze in the space in front of you. Simply release all appearances, allowing the mind to come to rest. Simply rest in awareness itself. Knowing that you're aware. If you get caught up in any tension, agitation or distraction, then lower the gaze Release the awareness into space, releasing all appearances and relaxing completely. Who is releasing the awareness into space? Who is the agent doing this? Don't try to intellectually answer this, just look. And then just rest, resting in the stillness of awareness. And if you find yourself falling into any dullness, drowsiness, or just having a blank mind, elevate the gaze and sharpen the focus, knowing that you're aware. Who is it that is sharpening the focus? Who is the agent doing this? Just look. And again, rest. Simply resting in the stillness of awareness. Knowing that you're aware. Who is it that is resting in awareness? And again, just rest. Resting in the open, spacious stillness of awareness. Knowing that you're aware. Any questions or comments?
It's not clear to me, according to the Padmasambhava's instruction, to start in a dualistic approach, where when you say release, you see empty space in front of you, and then you try to look back at the agent, or it sounded the way you were reading as the right from the beginning. You're in a non-dual state, sort of in a already resting in awareness.
Yeah, I mean,
you start dualistic and then you look for the agent, and then you fall into resting in awareness.
not so much. I mean, this practice in general is sort of more non-dualistic in flavour, but of course, when you give these sorts of instructions about releasing and sharpening, the nature of those instructions sort of puts us in a little bit of a dualistic sense, doesn't it? You know, if I say just rest in awareness, that's more sort of a more non-dualistic instruction. But then if I say release awareness into space, then it's sort of like, okay, there's a me that's doing this. So it's just that often when it's difficult in this practice to give instructions without putting us into a more dualistic mode. That's all. And I think that's what we find, is that when we do this sort of releasing and sharpening, that the nature of those instructions sort of put us into this like agent role of doing this, you know, this releasing into space or sharpening the focus. So, I mean, that's, yeah. And then, of course, just resting helps us to sort of let go of that a little bit. And so, actually, here, it's on the back of these instructions where we tend to have a more stronger sense of an agent or an observer, that Padmasambhava is asking the question, well, you know, because now we're sort of in a more dualistic sense doing that instruction. Then he's sort of asking, well, who's doing that? You know, is there actually an observer or an agent who's doing this action? And then it can really help, because then we're sort of more grasping on to some sort of separate observer or something, and then we can look for that and then let that go.
But then it does seem that you're starting with the dualistic view, yeah? Because you're looking for the agent, you're turning in from a dualistic to you're focusing on the agent.
Right, so remember here, I mean, there is an agent. No one's saying there's no agent. I mean, if there's no agent, we couldn't do anything. The question is there an independent agent? That's the question. And remember here, though, in this Shamatha practice, this questioning, which technically, of course, is Vipassana, he's mainly using this questioning for the purpose of sharpening the focus, the attention, to overcome dullness. That's the main purpose here. So we're not actually now going really into Vipassana practice for the sake of Vipassana. We're using a little bit of Vipassana questioning for the purpose of sharpening the focus to overcome dullness. Whereas, of course, later in Vipassana practice, we're really questioning to gain some insights. But he said, even if you do this little bit of questioning to sharpen, he said, you may even identify pristine awareness, which is, you may actually come to an insight of realizing, well, there's no independent agent here.
I find it hard to sharpen my focus, because I kind of feel like when I meditate, it's kind of like, it's kind of like the sensations and the thoughts are not very strong. They're kind of like in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm aware of them, but they're not really like a thing.
Right. Well, in this practice, of course, we're not really paying attention to
So
them.
when you want to sharpen the focus, it's kind of like on what? How can you tell if you're kind of being dull or you're just kind of like what do you sharpen the focus on? Because all the thoughts and like pains and whatever, they're not really sharp anyway when I do this meditation. It's kind of like,
Yeah, so you're sharpening it on just knowing that you're aware. That's it.
But it's kind of like a relaxed sharpness almost.
Well, in any shamatha practice, we want a relaxed sharpness. In all shamatha practices, we want to be really relaxed and sharp. That's something new for us, because normally now in daily life, when we're sharp, we're quite tense, and when we're relaxed, we're quite dull. So in all of these shamatha practices, we're trying to combine that. We're trying to be very relaxed and sharp at the same time. And here, of course, in the resting in awareness, there's no object with respect to which we're sharpening. We're just being more alert, more aware.
So the stuff that's going on, like they shouldn't become more clear, I guess. Like the thoughts and like...
Well, they may become more clear, but that doesn't mean we're focusing on them.
But
I mean, they're there, but...
But if they're not very clear, that's fine, or is that dullness?
Well, it could be dullness, but again, also, the thing is, if we're really paying attention to awareness itself, these things can appear and we don't notice them at all. Like, that's the sign that we're paying attention. If they're appearing but we don't notice them. It's a little bit like, if we are at home maybe, and we're reading a book and we're completely absorbed in reading a book, and there's someone else at home, they may say something to us. The sound waves are hitting the eardrum, but we don't hear them, do we?
But what if you
because we're so focused on the book.
What if you do hear them, but you don't really know what they're saying? That's
Right.
kind of how it feels.
Well, it could be that you're sort of getting very sleepy reading the book, or it could be that you're really in the book, but there's something a little bit there. So it could be both.
So how can you tell apart? If you're
Again, in all of these shamatha practices, and that's something that we're going to look at again with the rabbit, is there are many degrees of dullness and clarity, and many of them we can't even notice now at all. They only come through experience. I mean, now we would notice if we're we're just about to fall asleep. No, that we can probably notice, or we can notice that our mind is so heavy that hardly we notice the object, whatever it is. That we can probably notice, and maybe even the next level where we're sort of focusing on the object, but we can tell it's really fuzzy, and then maybe a bit more. But then there are much more subtle levels of dullness and levels of clarity that it's impossible for us to recognize now, and that will come through practice. So just practice. Yeah.
Just to say that it helped me.
What's helped you?
The questions to be more awake.
Sure,
more
great, fantastic. Then they serve the purpose. Oh, great. So you can do that you can do this in any of this shamatha practice. You can just add a little bit of questioning for this purpose. Good. But I wouldn't recommend doing too much, because we're actually adding something. So later in the practice, we wouldn't want to keep adding, like, counting the breath and all these labeling and stuff. But adding a little bit now can really sharpen the mind.
So what are the questions? Who is relaxing and who is...
Releasing and who is resting. But there are many other questions.
And then I asked myself, because it was too... and then I asked myself, where is the mind? Like something like that.
Yeah, where is the mind? Who's the observer? Where's the observer? All good? All good? Any questions? Oh, we've got 1 minute left. Yeah.
The observer is not independent, but independent of what? Like, when you said there is an agent, but it is not independent.
Well, that's what we have to discover. I mean,
Yeah,
that's what we're
exactly.
looking for.
But
The
independent, if we think it's independent of what in the regards of the meditation? In regards of the meditation,
independent of
of
the
appearances, of the appearances, or the.
well, actually, independent of everything, because we
Because
feel
it feels
that
independent.
Hmm?
It feels very independent.
correct. And then the question is to look for that, because if there really is an independent, and this is something we'll touch on in day 9, of course. If there really is an independent agent, we must be able to find it. It must be there. We must be able to point, say, there it is. No?
Okay, but there is a strong feeling